Okay, thank you for coming. Okay, good morning. And today I'm moderator, volunteer moderator. So next time, Bogdan or Professor Lee and Jonas can moderate with different topics. Okay, today I'd like to mention.
Could you go to the moderator which we were talking about?
Yeah, sure. So this meeting are planned to convey our discussion to the world in English. Also, we can actually have this meeting. The reason why we needed this one to discuss in English with non-Korean native speakers. So also to tell them into and convince them into this one. Not only ScienceWalden researcher and but other students as well from UNIST and other area. Okay, so today I selected one topic with goods and bads. So we know goods and bads. So this is goods. Do you think?
Yes.
What do you think? Yes?
It's good.
How about this one?
Awesome.
Awesome. Okay, so with the feces, we are talking about the feces and research and studying feces. So feces, with the feces, when we have those poo feces inside our body, within our intestine, so I think that the feces can be goods because we can take a lot of nutrients, including vitamin and other material for our health to stimulate our energy. So without the healthy environment in our intestine with the feces, the people may get sick. So we believe from the medical knowledge and scientific understanding, so the feces could be goods. So I'm not sure you agree or not, but we have goods inside our intestine in terms of, in the name of feces inside the body. But when we excrete, when we evacuate this feces into the flushing toilet, and suddenly come into bads. So everyone try to evade from those and would like to get away as far as possible. Even we would like to pay cost to ask a person to remove our feces as soon as possible, as far as possible, from our house where we belong to, where we live. And that's actually, I'm thinking, so we have needs from that situation with the bads, such as the feces. So we would like to buy, when you take this the iPhone, because this is goods, so we would like to get this one by paying our money. And also we would like to pay some cost to ask a person to remove our feces, which are bads. So there are needs as well. So we have a value from goods as well as the bads, goods and bads as well. So that's the first the topic I would like to discuss with you. So there are strong definitions, strong distinction between goods and bads. In the second one, let me take one example, two examples actually. The plastic and pharmaceutical. So somebody, and sometimes under different situations, somebody believe the plastic are goods. Plastics are goods, or sometimes bads. So everyone, under different situations, they may change their selection and choice. But depending on person, depending on their philosophy and priority, with the same, even with the same consequences, condition, environment, some believe plastic are goods, but the other person actually not. Do not think the plastic are goods. So there are conflict, there are unclear definition in categorizing goods and bads with a different object. So second example is pharmaceutical. So we have a pharmaceutical to cure our disease, but somebody believe even with the cancer, other diseases, so we are not want to, they do not want to be treated by pharmaceutical, depending on persons. So that's the goods and bads, the concept and category. I believe those are very much subjective. So first thing, scientifically, technologically, we can categorize object we are facing with, we are making everyday base into bads and goods. But the second way, so we have to discuss with this object with the concept of goods and bads, depending on situation, depending on philosophy and many others. So let me ask you. So let's ask ourselves. So when we okay. So this is last question actually. So then next item I would like to share with you is conflict and controversy situations. Okay. So atomic bomb, atomic power plant, for example. Somebody believes strongly this is good, but the other person this is very bad to our environment in terms of the nuclear, the waste. So with respect to situations our next generation face with. So a lot of things, goods and bads. Okay. So then ScienceWalden and other team try to transform bads into goods, right? So from the feces into the bioenergy, from bads and goods. Do you agree? But somebody agree. But actually, even before transforming our feces, the feces could be and maybe to some person goods, the still goods, because we can use this one for our agriculture and many other purposes. So then bring us into a different concept with the perception. Okay. So I'm not good at this philosophical definition of the perception, but to my understanding, to my knowledge, perception should be based on our senses. So extending our perception, we can make the knowledge sometime. We can make many other wisdom, knowledge, and technology, and even beyond. So how we actually the third person use different senses to help them to criticize or interpret whether some objects are goods and bads. So with this the scheme, with this form we make for other persons inside this the project of ScienceWalden, we can help person into some kind of a world where the people can be harmonized with the different goods and bads. So otherwise, they're always trying to utilize, misunderstand this concept of different goods and different bads. So that's the last topic. Bring us into last topic, how we practice ourselves as a scientist with art, and how we practice ourselves as artists in general, not specialized artists in general, not specialized scientists, but the scientists in general with arts, with the science. So this is my agenda I brought to you to discuss more about these goods and bads and practicing ourselves with this the ScienceWalden, the project. And then so there may be a big conflict with one object. So between different concept of goods and bads, how we actually compromise this situation with the person. They are fighting with each other. Okay. So with this question, with the agenda, we can discuss. Okay? You understand my points about Bogdan?
Yes, it's it's a broad topic.
Yeah, it's
Because-
a lot packed into one
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Started from the context of bads and goods and how they are perceived differently. And I totally agree with that. Like most, the perception of the society on certain things or new technological advancement, like the nuclear power, is divided, like always is divided. Even with the plastic, it's divided. But I hope most of the population thinks of plastic as good when you use it, but then when you throw it away, it should be waste. Like, I also think that if I use it for a plastic bottle, it's a good, but then I just throw it away, not recycle, just throw it out there in the field, that's totally waste, and I shouldn't do that. It can be reused and made into a new goods. And here I don't want to talk about people who say like plastic is bad, totally, don't use plastic, use something else. Because, well, plastic is easy to make and it's not so unhealthy so far, the studies have shown.
Even before
plastic.
the dump the plastic into the environment, still
Yes.
somebody believe
Yes.
those are bad. as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Like I said, some people just don't agree with plastic at all.
Uh,
So yeah, I don't have any opinions about that.
so
Do
we
you want to change their perception?
no, I don't want to change. So with intention. So I always prefer to use natural way
Yeah.
to convince person without noticement. Okay, that's my prefer.
Subtle
Way.
change of perception.
I don't want to use any law, any regulation, any education to tell person into this movement or in a natural way.
Yes.
So I'd like to do
That's-
with this project of ScienceWalden.
That's the best way. By imposing rules and regulations, I'm sure some people will disagree with the rules and regulations, they will not obey them anyway. So it's more like in a philosophical sense of perception. The people want to use them because they want to use it. It's a circular
Yeah.
theme. They don't have a reason, like someone told me to use it, it's good for my health. They just want to use it because they feel it's good for them. So,
Aside from one you mentioned with plastic, so so I'd like to ask you why people actually prefer to use plastic.
it's convenient,
Okay.
it's light, it's mass produced right now, easy to produce compared to other materials. They still use it, but nowadays they are luxury, like even in phones, metal, glass, there are components of metal and glass instead of the plastic, but it raised the prices.
But in exchange of their mindedness actually. So they sacrifice their mind to be guilty of using plastic, but they still want to use it. So what happened to the human being? Okay, so they kind of they are seemingly sick and tired of campaign types of movement with plastic and other waste. So they agree, but they hate to be treated with education and regulation. But even right now, the 16-year-old girl actually scolded us over a lot of things. So then sometimes we agree, but we feel uncomfortable. What do you think? Do you agree or? With the campaign, so you still comfortable with those movements?
Well, I'm okay with that, but I can see that many people seem to have some kind of aversion to that kind of campaign. So I actually agree with you that it's not really a good idea to change their attitudes about those kind of environmental issues. So probably, well, I mean, if we try to extend our agenda, then I think that there is some kind of concept that's sometimes known as nudging strategy. So I guess my understanding is that you can try to change or tell them what to do. Instead, we kind of give some kind of hint that if you behave a certain way, then there is some kind of positive consequences. But the way in which we can send them the message is not just give them a direct message of tell them what to do. I actually have I had no idea about the exact strategy, but I think I'm in agreement with you that it's not really a good idea to directly try to change their attitude.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's still some benefit in that approach.
Which approach?
Of
Campaigning, okay.
Because I think essentially people are so diverse that this is still a very important part of just starting the conversation around social change and just getting people to realize that this is a problem. Because then that video I'm sure got shared a lot of times, and some people who are not necessarily keen on topics related to plastic will probably see it somewhere, and I think it's sort of social reinforcement, and people are also very used to that. In as much as it's important, I think there's never been a one-stop solution to all problems. And I think what is needed is for different approaches. And so I think campaigning is still important, but then we've also realized that campaigning hasn't done it all. And that there's still sort of a niche area for other approaches, maybe sort of like the subtle changes, or maybe just other approaches that are going to be, like people signing petitions online. I think all these are little attempts and just efforts that all converge at a central point to sort of institute the social change that we need. And so, of course, campaigning is not, even though that's these days the most prominent form of, just advocacy. I think there is the need for other more subtle changes, and I think like ScienceWalden is trying to work towards a different direction, and they're also working. So I think there's still an ecosystem where all of these types of advocacy, movements can coexist. That's what I think.
Okay, even if the campaign types of a movement is successful with plastic and other waste, so still I don't think it touches the perception of the public. So they touch more likely ethic and morality instead of a perception. So perception, the reason why I bring this concept or terminology concept, the perception, is that the perception should be based on senses. So campaign cannot touch people, just sensibility. So that's my idea. I'm not sure you don't agree. So how we actually touch sense of person to get to that, the senses in touch. So yes.
Okay. Once I visited University of British Columbia, and what is very impressive for me was that it seems to me that the campus seems to be very eco-friendly in many ways. So for instance, there's in many cases, in all garbage cans, they have some particular can where you can throw away the leftover of the food so that they can recycle. And once I told the story that the campus, there is an occasion that they had to cut off a big tree, and then they put some kind of sign and some kind of explanation. Very in detail, they explain why they had to cut down the tree, just as one tree, but they kind of suggest that they really care about the environment. And there are many artworks that seem to represent some kind of recycling energy in many areas of the campus. So all those kind of things seem to create the impression that create some kind of positive impression about preserving the nature without telling them what to do. So I mean, it's probably not my conscious thought, but I think that if you reside in an environment that has surrounded by those kind of signs, then you probably unconsciously develop some kind of mind there that's going to a positive attitude for the environment.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But my point is that when you use this type of campaign, so I agree. So that actually emotional or rather informative description of what they doing against the nature is very helpful to people understand what happened to their surroundings in terms of ethics and other things. But the campaign bring us a lot of guiltiness, bring us a lot of responsibility. So sometimes the people they feel uncomfortable with those types of attitude. So sick and tired types of things. That's why I suggest us to use a different way, at least under the project of ScienceWalden. So different levels, a different direction, different angle, how we actually implement, execute our attempts to tell ourselves to be involved in this movement with the plastic and
Okay, so what was interesting about the sign example, instead of telling them, we should preserve the nature, we shouldn't cut down the tree, we don't know the reason, instead of telling them directly, when I see the sign that, there is this, and they just explain why we had to cut down the tree, then I think that, people may not feel very uncomfortable. Yeah. So I guess, if you're just trying hard, we're just doing our business, then that doesn't seem to have any implication that you're to blame not to follow our lead. So this is not this message.
How we transform those in which country? Which campus?
Canada.
Oh, Canada. Into where we live with plastic and others. So when we throw the plastic into trash can, so we can actually explain why we have to this to this small.
Throw it in the plastic recycling,
or rather just a normal trash bin.
Well, we shouldn't throw it in the normal trash bin. And that's like guilt if you put the shouldn't throw.
Okay.
People will feel guilty, of course. So, like you said, this guilt. I think most of the social changes so far were based on guilt, like people campaigning or having revolutions and telling what they feel is wrong and urging leaders to change. it was not changing the perception of the population, it was changing the perception of the elites and the ruling class so far. So it's always, I think in what countries, like plastic straws were banned, but I don't know the country exactly.
I know Rwanda banned plastic altogether.
Where?
Rwanda,
plastic altogether.
they banned plastic.
How did they manage that? I think it was also by campaigning and.
Yeah, I guess it was, I don't know the details exactly, but the president, I think, did ban plastic altogether.
Yeah, so it was also a decision
from the top, of course.
Not from down, from the
Of course,
population,
yes,
just
yes,
decided
yes.
to not use it because they don't want to. So
Not only
That's
from
an
the
issue.
bottom, but also I'd like to mention the tools to operate our system. So, for example, so we have a money system. So because we are studying money can be used as tools to recycle plastic and others. So people mention punishment as well as bonus types of that, incentives. Okay. But how we actually design our money to convince person to recycle plastic. The plastic is better than our pool. The plastic, at least we can see what happened around us. But the pool, they use underground pipeline, so we never saw them. We never see them,
Yeah.
recognize it, even their existence. But they affect us a lot. Even better than, higher than the plastic, I believe. I'm not sure about it exactly, but I guess. So how we make our system with the different tools to operate our waste sanitation system to get better, unconsciously, in a natural way. Okay, that's the ScienceWalden project.
I think it's more a process of social learning and how we can progressively introduce some of these ideas of there's an alternative, that it doesn't only have to be this current system, because I think a lot of what we do bothers on convenience and just the fact that, oh, this is what everybody else is doing, and if I decide to go plastic free, it's going to be maybe probably extra cost, more expensive, more inconvenient, gonna take more time, and I think most of this is just social priming that everybody just sort of gets into. And so now the question would be, how do we get ideas like, we want to recycle more, we want people to use more of maybe the same bottles or tumblers for their coffee and their water, so they're using less plastic. And I think in this situation, looking at a currency like FSM and how, because it's sort of a complementary currency and an alternative system, we can then input some of these features in, because then I think once we're able to get more people involved and more shops involved, then it's easier to build this on top of it, because the philosophy of the currency, as always, flows into the economics and not the other way around. Because I think a lot of the time it's just, this is how much I bought it and this is how much I have to make from it, and this is how much I was paid, and this is how much I have to use, I have to buy, and all that. So I think if we're able to get FSM as a currency to take a little bit more shape, then it's easier to say that, okay, if you've bought into this idea, then you probably be able to, give more of a discount for people who are using tumblers and they're using FSM. And so I think mainly it's still about getting people to understand what these ideas are and why we're shooting more towards an alternative or complementary system of currency and valuation. And I think with that, there's the possibility that we can use that as a means of carrying out some social planning.
Quick question: how do you get the first step? Like you said, the more we involve people and companies into, the easier it is. How do you get the first?
Well, so I think it's like a chicken and egg situation. But then you'd have to, and I think there are still projects ongoing to see where where FSM can be able to take shape in that sense, because I think, for instance, even in UNIST, for instance, last night I was actually coming back to the lab, and then I met a friend who participated in the flea market that we had the other time, and he was riding his bicycle around campus that Professor Tartar had donated, and I actually sometimes I forgot.
Not donated. Okay.
Well, he had given.
No,
to,
not given.
Well, what word?
Yeah.
He had what? What
Did
word?
a transaction.
Yeah.
Okay, that he transacted it. The reason why I want to say, because I think in the beginning, I would say transacted because Professor Tartar didn't receive any goal for that particular transaction, and because of how the flea market was set up at that time. So, but that's still not that important. But at the end of the day, it just showed me what is possible, and that it's because he was riding the bike and was like, oh, this is a really good bike, and I take it everywhere around campus, and it helps me get everywhere I need to get to. I was like, oh, really? I actually didn't even remember that there was this bicycle among the list, the stuff that we collected for the event. And I think just from there, if we had the conversation and now he has this currency, and next time he's going to buy, coffee, it's like, oh, I got this bike from this curb from a transaction with FSM, and the shop says, oh, if you bring your tumbler, I can give you less for it. I think this person has more of an affection and an affinity towards the system because he also sees the benefit and how it has positively sort of affected him. And so I think in this situation, it would be easier to tell the person to use FSM because he has seen what is possible. And so I think, of course, it's not going to be easy getting there and having a lot of shops there. But yesterday was a huge testimonial to the fact that this bicycle could have been sitting in Professor Tartar's house up until today if that event had probably not been held. And so I think, to answer your question, there's no good answer, but it's a one step at a time thing, and I think that's how we have to take it.
Okay. This step seems to me like providing value to people. So it's not telling a story, but providing value. So they don't really care about how FSM works, but only that they get something in return. So then they are like happy customers and they want to use the system more and more. So there are two approaches, providing value or providing a good story.
I think before maybe that
episode.
Yeah, episode of that's
valuator.
Yeah.
But happiness,
yeah. Well, I think the main when we had that event, what we did was and I think it also borders a lot on that if you transacted, you wanted to transact the particular product that you had, you would write just a little backstory of what is this product, what does it mean to you, have you used this, why? So it's a personal story. So it's a little bit of both. And so there were a lot of products over there, and people would come in and read it and go, oh, okay, this is nice. And so I want to take this product. Of course, there's both utility because you want to take something that you need, but also sometimes you would see something that's like, oh, this is something fun, and I think I'd like to have it. And I think it leaves this trace and this, like a little thread of just connections between people, because then my old object now is with another person, and it wasn't only the material transaction, but also an immaterial link that you have with the previous owner of the object. And I think all these are features that, if tied more into the currency, differentiates it from other monies that we're using and trying to create more of a utility in that sense that can bring about this sort of subtle changes that we're talking about. And so I think there's a lot of possibilities to what can be done with a complementary currency, and I think that's what I see as very good about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, currency and episodic or storytelling are our sign to be included for our communication inside this community, to make people happy and to bring less unhappiness with less despair and frustration. So that's to remind us the behaviorism you mentioned. So with incentive or other things. So that's the we can think about the different side. So instead of using a campaign, instead of using regulation and law, we can use a sign. For example, money and currency, and some kind of a story explanation. So and storytelling. That's the sign we can use with this project of ScienceWalden. So FSN is one example for us to do some project with. But we can think about other things. One of those is episodic value. So I'm not sure that is value or not. So can you explain your episodic value?
Well, I was just trying to make a difference. Theorize the difference between FSM and other kind of currencies. And my first thought was that because at the very beginning, even when we came up with the idea of FSM, in the very beginning stage, people has to move their feces and food waste into the tank. So there was a concern, what motivate people to put up with this kind of inconvenience. And we cannot just appeal to their voluntary kindness of doing that. So what would be the motivation? And then we were coming up with the notion of FSM. But then I was thinking that okay, there is this kind of economic value, economic advantage if you use, if you practice this kind of thing. But is it all? Is it all there is that we can get from this? And I was thinking that there's probably something more. I understand the importance of economic benefit, but could there be anything more than this? So then I was thinking that probably if you use FSM, then there may be something more than just economic value or economic advantage. And I was thinking that that's probably because of the narrative that you can participate in. So I think that Jonah's story about the bicycle might be a good thing. You can just take the service of bike if you just spend some money, dollar or one or whatever. But then if you use FSM, then probably there may be something more than just using the service and thereby getting some benefit. So I was just trying to theorize the notion of thing, and there is one example that actually Professor Cho once gave me, and then there was, if you're talking about, how you can get the portion of FSM, from your peers when you get in this application of FSM. And he said that, if your friend is trying to give you some money for no good reason, then you might feel some uncomfortableness. You might feel uncomfortable because you don't think that you deserve to getting some money, you know what I mean? But if you get some FSM from your friends, then I guess you don't have that much of resistance of getting it. And I think that's probably because you're participating in the story building process by using the application, and thereby inviting your friend to join in this story building process. So I would think that that's just one way of seeing it.
So both of you, Jonas and Professor Lee, mentioned about the motive. Okay, so we have a reason for our behavior and action. We have a motive as well for our action and behavior. So there should be a difference between motive and reason. So we have a reason to move like this. So we may have a motive to behave, to act in a different way. So how we actually tell person into this types of movement in terms of reason or in terms of by motive. So we can pay them. Okay, we can pay existing money, or we can regulate them. So that's we are using concept of reason. But when we touch motive concept with the different tools, we may have to use different tools to tell person, to invite them into this world. So that's the different side. So we actually tell the story with the tree. We tell person our background story to touch them, to ask them to agree with our action to remove the tree in the campus. Also, we can tell very touching music, deliver music to touch them. So music is one of example of a sign as well, I believe. Also, we can pay different money. So if we pay existing money to recycle plastic, that's the older person's way of doing and persuading other person. But I'm old, but we are young in spirit and philosophy. The way we take with this ScienceWalden project is to use different tools, different science to convince the person act a different way on the different motive. So the motive is my preferred terminology rather than reason. So we have a reason, of course we have a reason, but I'd like to use motive with which person can touch with their perception. That's why I use perception instead of cause and result, causalities, types of that. Okay. So the FSM, for example, or other episodic, the value, another narrative, or even plot and movie stuff, and picture, and the sound, and everything could be a science. So, to walk for the people with the motive. So that's why we would like to design the new science to touch people's motive with their perception based on their senses. And then we can make the knowledge and wisdom, the beyond the rules of perception. Otherwise, we have to memorize the knowledge from other persons. So based on our senses, we can make our own knowledge and wisdom. Then probably we are developing new university, different from UNIST, different from Harvard, MIT, because we are the visioning a different world with a different knowledge based on perception and the motive. So Newton bring optics theory, but I'm not sure exactly, I never met Newton, but his background, his ground, his reading experience, so somewhere in his reading, in his experience, there are some motive, okay, other than reason. So there might be motive for him to bring optics theory with a different motive other than reasons. So that helped him to invent, to create the theory of optics, the theory of a lot of things we are still using, we believe as a truth. But we may have a different truth based on different motive. So that could be sometimes the scientific knowledge and the philosophical wisdom and truth as well. So then, sometimes within at least a small, even small room, in the name of ScienceWalden, there is no boundary between science and arts. Because we believe reason, also we believe truth and motive. Inside in it, so we can move because of reason, not because of that, but because of the motive. Because we have a motive, that's why we move. Okay, with the different sides. So FSM is one of those. So last comment on what we discussed today with this topic.
Yeah, I'm thinking that people have a motive to enter the community. They are touched or influenced by stories. We raise their curiosity, interest. But afterwards, after they enter the community, there also has to be some kind of engagement. So they need a reason to stay. I'm not sure, a motive to stay. Like, this is complicated.
Okay.
Like, first it's clear that they need a motive to join, because reason is not. But then they need a reason to stay, or
Inside the community.
inside the community, yeah, and be active participants, not only a number on the community that doesn't help us. So maybe I'm thinking, like right now we don't have a lot of things to engage them, only ideas. So I'm thinking maybe people who join the community should have like a voice to say like what they don't like, and if they have like any ideas. It doesn't mean we'll implement them, but it's more like a big social brainstorming. Like everyone who enters our community can say anything. We have freedom of expression, and they can say bad things, good things. We'll just read them, and maybe we have different ideas. So that's one way to engage at first, because of course in the future there will be more engagement, economics, value, perception. But at the beginning, right now, I'm not sure how we engage the new members.
Yeah, I think that your distinction between reason and motivation is very insightful, and I think that reason is a very broad term. So everybody has a reason, and there are all kinds of reasons. I mean, and even if you're not interested at all about this kind of project at all, you may still say that. So, but you have a reason to behave a certain way. I mean, everybody has a reason not to kill. Simple. But motivations are different. I mean, even if if you're not really interested about this thing, then maybe you're not motivated at all. Although you still have a reason to do that. So I think that your emphasis on motivation as opposed to reason is actually correct, I think. And I think that by being motivated to be a certain way and engage in certain activities in this project, I think that you're actually developing some kind of storytelling process as well. So you're actually a player in the system if you're motivated.
Yeah.
Okay. But merely having a reason doesn't mean that you're inside inside the project.
But at least we have to understand the scientists stick to the reason. with the object movement. So when we believe our habitual behavior as object instead of subjective behavior, so we have to understand the reason behind their behavior. So motive. So we extract the persons with their habitual behavior onto the surface to motivate them to understand the motive of their act instead of behavior. So that's my point. Using our sign instead of regulations. So that's my point. Okay. What's else? You still sleepy?
Well, I'm not sleepy. I think there's a lot to digest in this particular context. I think motivation is very important. However, I think it's very difficult to find what motivates people. And I think a lot of people don't even know what motivates them. I think we all know the reason why we do a lot of things, but motives sometimes are more difficult to identify. And so that sort of brings us to a situation where ScienceWalden as an institution that's trying to also find motive is like fishermen casting a net. It's like, okay, let's come up with some ideas and let's throw it out and see who it drags in. And I think there a lot of thought has to go into that whole process of also being able to target, because I feel like in order to motivate, it can't be, as you already said, everybody has a reason, but motives are more specific. And so I think just thinking about it, just like how do we actually motivate? Like not give reasons, but how do we actually motivate? And I guess it's a thought that I will probably have to go into. It's something that we've been thinking about for a while, and I still have a lot to think about in that sense of how do we really give motive to.
Yeah, you just gave me an idea. When companies design a product, they have a target audience, but we don't have that. So it's really difficult to say we want everyone, because like you said, the motivations of everyone, of every person is different. And yeah, that's why they develop this concept of target audience that separates by age, gender, different mental states, different experience. When we say everyone, to provide a motive for everyone, it's really difficult. Yes. So, but it can grow from one motive to the other. So you can get everyone, but at first you need to find our catchy motive. It's like, who do we address first? Mm-hmm. Who do we want to first in our community? I'm thinking of that and starting from there. This thinking doesn't put a lot of pressure on us to find a way to get everyone, because when you think that, it's overwhelming.
That's why we would like to touch the bottom tiers instead of higher levels of
like currency.
Currency.
So you mean
the bottom lines,
really
the line tiers to invite everyone rather than the target person. If you target one person, so we can actually use a specific idea from other sides, give other way around, and so on and so forth.
So I mean, just as a question, I know that targeting with the currency is also based on the assumption that all people's motives around money are sort of same. I mean, in a sense, money is a very central part of a lot of people's lives. But at the same time, I think still, even if we target currency, how people accept currency is totally different. in a lot of contexts, and people have varying degrees of how important money is to them and how they utilize it. And so I think even in that sense, even targeting currency and starting from there, and so that's why of course FSM is not the only, thing or the initiative device, the tool, I should say,
tools,
tool,
yes.
the tool that we're using, and there's also other like education, science, art, all these other things. I think
painting,
music, everything has to come together to
and language,
of course,
yes,
language, of course. So yeah, I think it's definitely very important to look at it from a lot of multifaceted ways, and sometimes it feels like FSM is the star, in ScienceWalden, the main guy. But yeah, I think there's also a lot of other initiatives that also deserve as much.
So in the end, we're back to basic income, because what motivates everyone, I guess, that's basic income. Of course, I may use the money to buy more food, or you may use the money to travel more, and like saving depends on person, how they use the money, not only what they think about money. So I'm thinking, what is everyone wants with money? The first thing, it's like basic needs. So that's a really low point.
To give
Currency, basically.
to give them freedom, to select everything.
And then they have the option to select.
So sometimes people ask to the UN persons, if we give everybody the basic income, they use different things with different energy, so which stimulate global warming. But the people actually, so in UN and the Basic Income Association, they mentioned if you got some kind of a security to be free of using everything, so they may have a courage to use different energy resources to mitigate the global warming changes. That's the different topic, I believe. So we can select in the near future. So if you're really interested in community, so you can select the next time to moderate our meeting with the topic of community, if you want, and then Jonas, you can select other topic. Okay, Bogdan, I ask you to select the community, concept of community. Okay.
Yeah, but
Can you do that?
when is the next time?
2 weeks from today?
2 weeks. I don't think I can.
4 weeks. 1 month later. Okay. So it's up to you.
Make work.
Okay. Don't have any burden. How about Jonas?
Community?
No. Any topic?
Any topic?
Yeah.
You mean in 2 weeks?
Yeah, from today, yes.
Well, I guess I could come with a topic. Doesn't sound like I'm not taking it. I'm just taking it slow. So I think I can.
You're a slow person? You're a hip hop person.
Yeah, sometimes there's different types of hip hop people. There's the fast hip hop and
I
there's
never
the slow.
exposed to.
Yeah, I'm the slow hip hop type of person. So that's.
So that's the person I'd like to ask Professor Lee. You would like to be a moderator
Okay.
next meeting?
You mean after class and
No. 2 weeks
Oh, in 2 weeks.
from today.
Maybe in 4 weeks.
Okay.
I think I need.
I'll do it in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay, you can do that.
Okay.
After that, yeah.
Okay. In 6 weeks. Probably.
Question. Is it
Yes.
something has to do with the ScienceWalden project?
No, not at all.
Anything?
So indirectly connect to science work.
Yeah. Okay.
It should be okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'll think about it. What would be a good topic for?
Sure. Okay. But we naturally we can talk about science work.
Sure.
Even if we have a different topics away from science work. Okay. Thank you very much for being part of this one meeting.
Okay.
meeting beds, but we try to transform this meeting into a good meeting with the betters. Okay, thank you, and I'll see you.
Okay.